Okay, so welcome everyone. So I would like to start all my talks telling that today is a good day and tomorrow may be better. Only if you are paying attention and trying to reflect upon the type of experiences that I will be able to share today. So the agenda for today is covering project governance. I will be talking some definition of project governance, what is the challenge implementing project governance, which are the components of governance, of project governance that I have found in my practitioner life as a project manager and also as a program manager. Also, I will be talking about a case study of lack of project governance that usually constitutes, a big problem in order to get the project achieving successfully. I will talk also a little bit about roles to maintain project governance. The governance information repository. Project in a box is one of the concepts that I try to define about how to customize your project governance depending on the type of projects you are managing in your organization. And finally, I will be talking about the intensity level of the governance framework. When you are implementing, what is the level you are covering and how to move forward. And by the end, but not less important, I'll be covering something about why is project governance critical to the success of a project. Finally, some conclusions. So you can ask me any question at the end. If you have any question, comments, or whatever, I will be able to cover by the end of the presentation. So, well, okay. So project governance and also program governance is a term that has been used quite loosely in the project management community. More and more is getting used, and I really believe that there is a growing trend that when a project fails, project governance seems to be the root cause for the unsuccessfully executed project. But the thing is that what does project governance mean? What is the real meaning of project governance? Project governance entails all the key elements to make a project successful, and however, is not one size fits all. So project governance needs to be customized, needs to be tailored to an organization's specific needs, and there are some components that must be considered. I will be considering and talking about during this presentation. So those components will influence how you can create and how you can implement, as well as monitor and control the governance framework on your project, and even in your program or even in your portfolio. So project governance is an oversight function. So it's defined as the framework, functions, and processes that guide project management activities in order to create a unique product, service, or result to meet organizational, strategic, and organizational goals. So there are two critical elements in this definition. One critical element is alignment with organizational governance. So there needs to be an understanding of what is the project environment to ensure that there is, or you can find a right fit with the established organization's governance. So this type of alignment is crucial and is very crucial factor and must be considered when defining your project governance framework, and defining the roles and responsibilities, and defining also what is the stakeholder engagement and communication that you will be working with during your project. So these prerequisites or these requirements need to be achieved on the onset on the project kickoff. And the second important thing to remark here is longevity. So monitoring and controlling of the governance plan consists of three components that come to fruition during the life cycle of your project. And the project manager needs to make sure that the governance plan is implemented through the project, and must also monitor and control and take care of the effectiveness, the level of effectiveness that you have of the governance plan. And when monitoring and controlling the project governance framework, the project manager needs to be sure that there are adequate, or you are running a number of adequate meetings, a number of frequency on reporting, on risk and issue management, something about assurance, control assurance, and project management control processes. But in any case, you have always a challenge when many project managers have struggled. And with this, how to define and validate and quantify the return of investment in establishing project governance, because everyone understands that some rules need to be established, and in order to make decisions, if you have a structure, you have a framework, you will be able to follow this type of elements in the framework. But how to define, validate, and quantify what is the return of investment, and being able to validate and quantify the return of investment and establishing the project governance is also a must in my humble point of view, as well as determining how to make the project governance framework repeatable but dynamic to the project-specific requirements, because the project-specific requirements perhaps and probably very frequently will be changing. So the development and implementation of a project governance is absolutely key at the onset of a project. So for me, project governance is essentially the follow-up, the set of points or the number of issues, the recipe for the project manager on how to manage a project. Well, what about the governance components of and their applicability to the real world? I found some of them. I tried to summarize 8 of them. I will be covering and giving to you a small explanation regarding that. Governance models. When we are defining an adequate governance model that complements the organization, the project manager must take into consideration, taking into account the amount of rigor that you want to incorporate, in this particular project. Discipline usually is not too much or too well implemented in many organizations. So it is absolutely crucial. Establishing the right governance model is not trivial, it's not easy, but remember, it is not impossible. Today is a good day. However, based on my particular experience, every organization should put together a series of key elements or key components that are the requirement components for project governance based on the project scope, the timeline, the complexity, the risk, the stakeholder requirements and needs, and the importance to the organization. So this will be a simple tool that does a quick analysis based on some of the indicators that we are talking about, defining how aggressive your governance framework needs to be, and which components are really necessary, which components are mandatory. When we are talking about accountability and responsibilities, defining accountability and responsibilities is probably the core of the project manager task, right? Defining that. Not having a definition of accountabilities and responsibilities will have a direct impact on the effectiveness of meetings, on the change control process, on the risk assessment, the communication plan, and basically in general over the project. So when defining accountability and responsibilities, the project manager needs to define not only who is accountable for, but also who is responsible, consulted and informed for each of the project's deliverables in that particular project. When we are talking about stakeholder engagement, we need to engage all the stakeholders from the very beginning. So if you have a governance plan and all the stakeholders have been explained it, and you have been talking to them, and you have spent enough time about how to understand the project roles, and the first step, for instance, is to identify all the stakeholders and taking care of them. In my particular case, spending time with the stakeholders is absolutely crucial because if not, you cannot build the relationships that you will need over the project life cycle. So this seems like something like if one stakeholder is left out, this can affect the entire project, and you will have a delay, or you will not be not successful because this individual or this organization was not able to participate. So obviously, stakeholders can span a broad spectrum. So this includes, but they are not limited to the project steering committee, the PMO, the sponsors, the suppliers, the government boards, the project team, the business owners, and so on. And in my particular point of view, stakeholders are very essential. And they are anyone who can be impacted by all the project deliverables. So the project manager needs to define who the stakeholders are and get an agreement with the sponsor, the project sponsor, what their interests and expectations are, and most important, how to communicate with the stakeholders. So these are special and very, very important roles in order to take into account regarding stakeholder engagement. But as I said, is crucial. Number 4, and not less important, is stakeholder communication and meeting and reporting. So we always, perfectly as a project manager, need to prepare a communication plan and needs to be developed once all the stakeholders have been identified in order to know their requirements, the level of influence, the level of power versus influence or interest and expectations. And a well-formulated communication plan delivers much more concise and efficient and timely information to all pertinent stakeholders. So once the communication plan is identified, the project manager needs to ensure that there is a right balance of meetings and reporting. So in my particular experience, when I developed my first version of my communication plan, I needed to change it, very frequently because I was asking questions to the stakeholders. This is my recommendation: ask questions to all the stakeholders and try to verify that you are in the right path in order to satisfy their expectations. So the stakeholder needs need to be defined in order to ensure that each stakeholder understand the mode and the content of communication, the frequency, who is the owner, which are the milestones, which are the gates, and this type of thing. When we are talking about risk and issue management, there is not secret that projects are, riddled with risks and issues. They are dealing with risks and issues all the time. So it is very difficult to forecast what is going to occur, but the lack of preparation will put you as a project manager and the project team in danger. Okay, so at the beginning of any project, there is a need to have a consensus about how to identify, classify, and prioritize the number of risks or issues, and being better prepared, because obviously there will be some risks that cannot be identified at the beginning, but at least under a strategic point of view and as an executive point of view, is very important to do it. This type of exercise should be including executives, because if you are able to include executives, the sponsor, and so on, there are some risks that are affecting the whole organization that probably you are not aware of because you are more concentrated on the project details than the organizational environment. Number 7 is assurance. So project assurance is, which ensure that risks and issues are managed effectively and defines what will be the metrics, how to measure that foster the delivery confidence of the project. So assurance is a vital component and is devising the metrics that will be giving visibility into the project performance. And some of the metrics may include, but probably not limited to, adherence to business case, effectiveness of the change control and risk analysis processes, the ability to monitor deviations in project scope, time, cost, and schedule, and quality assessment and tracking accuracy about the project plan. And finally, but not less important, project management control process. This is simplest component, but the more challenging one to execute, because the ongoing checks and balances, right? Because the thing is that the project is, running, the monitoring and controlling processes has a purview of all tasks and metrics associated with the project and measures the performance against the baseline, scope, time, and resources. So this is not a one-time assessment. It needs to be continuous, and the project manager needs to be constantly measuring the performance and taking timely action of any type of deviation. So those are the 8 components that I found are really applicable to the real world in terms of governance components. I will be reading them for you again. Number 1 is governance models. Number 2 is accountability and responsibilities. Number 3 is stakeholder engagement. Try to get as maximum engagement and involvement from your stakeholders from the very beginning to the end. Stakeholder communication, meeting and reporting, risk and issue management, assurance, and project management control process. Okay. Then, so I will be sharing with you a case study. So 3 years ago, I was assigned as a project manager to deploy a software product. So this engagement entailed deploying a new cutting-edge technology for the first time in Europe on behalf of one of the largest IT software providers. So the project was already running when I took control. So, however, at the onset of joining the project, I found that there were several deficiencies, numerous deficiencies pertaining to the basics of project governance, okay? Lack of rules, lack of guidance, and so on. So the previous project manager had been highly technical and more than 20 years of experience in this area, but the customer was still, not very happy with the way the project was progressing. So being a newcomer, as I was, excuse me, as a new project manager to a pre-existing project team, I knew I had limited time to turn around the customer perception. So I needed to get the project recovering and, getting the customer happy. So, however, I wanted to treat gently and not to be like, not to act like an elephant entering into the room. So I started engaging with all the stakeholders. I remember I passed a lot of time interviewing all the stakeholders and trying to share their thoughts, their requirements with them, the level of happiness, the level of interest, trying to identify the level of importance of those stakeholders. And this included the account team, the customer technical team, the product developers, quality assurance, and project and technical managers. So I prepared, what happened is that I prepared some questions. I formulated some basic questions that cover the 8 components I was talking about. So I prepared some questions regarding governance model to clarify the existing governance model, what are the gaps, and what is currently working. Okay, in order to identify what was the existing gap. Second, regarding stakeholder engagement and risk assessment, I was asking them, what is your role and how do you communicate status updates, risk, and changes? Number 3 was regarding stakeholder expectations. So what do you consider success for the project? Very, very important. So I found several discordances among them. I mean, there is not a total agreement, as you can guess. In terms of roles and responsibilities, my question was, what is your current role and what are you accountable for? Okay. These questions were helping me in order to understand much better what the situation was, what was the context, okay? What was the environment in which, this project was running. Question regarding risk assessment. What are the key challenges and how are they communicated and addressed? Meetings and reporting. What meetings do you chair and participate in? And I discovered that obviously not all the stakeholders were engaged in all the meetings, but some of them skipped it. Some of them were not attending just because they didn't consider it important, or they found a lack of consistency in the communication level, or they were too busy, some excuses. The second question in terms of meetings and reporting was, what reports are you responsible for? Do you need to review that are missing and that you find obsolete? Sometimes, in many cases, one of the things that I found is that too many meetings, running too many meetings just for not making decisions or just to summarize the same data and repeating that person X is responsible for that on this date, and the next meeting, person X is still responsible for that on this date, and so on. In terms of assurance, how are you tracking in accordance with the project charter and baseline project management plan? Okay, what is the level of accomplishment? And in terms of project management control and roles and responsibilities, what project metrics are you accountable for? And do you have an interest in, and do you monitor? So those questions were supposed to be thought-provoking and lead to longer, detailed discussions, and they do, and they were. Asking these questions were enabling me to form the baseline governance framework. So I was able to understand what was the level of stakeholder engagement and communication, which was the foundation for other governance components. And after refining the governance framework, I was challenged to execute. So I devised a meeting structure and a communication plan that depicted the flow of information up to the project sponsor and determined the frequency of information flow, the content of the reports and meetings structure, and that were aligned with the stakeholder expectations and with their engagement. And within this communication plan, I was able to create forums for the project teams to address issues and changes based on their roles and responsibilities. So it was something like a teamwork process, and the sole reason for the previous project manager had been removed had hinged on the lack of governance and adherence to a governance framework. So the lack of assessment and the lack of understanding of the stakeholder expectation was that which created an spiral effect. So despite the team's hard work, they endured limited guidance on how to address some issues, and that was triggering delays in the project and created some gaps in adhering the project charter. So this in turn threatened the longevity of the project, right? So the thing is that those type of questions were, the drivers in which by which I was trying to align, the real governance framework in order to establish. And for that, I needed to engage key people, key stakeholders. So you know perfectly that in any project, the key stakeholder is the customer, is the sponsor, maybe project manager, and so on. But I found 4 crucial roles that need to be established and directed and implemented and validated by the governance, and they are the sponsor. The role of the sponsor is absolutely crucial. So in many occasions, in many situations, in my particular experience as a project manager and also as a consultant, I found that the project sponsor role is not very well identified, or at least the meaning of sponsorship or the meaning of the role of the sponsor, I mean, the expectations from the sponsor are not clarified, are not clear enough in the organization. In some cases, even I discovered that the sponsor, him or herself, didn't know about what to do and how to act or react in different situations in the project. So engaging the sponsor and defining who was the sponsor and which were their responsibilities and roles and so on was important. The steering committee, in order to be able to take or to make the right decisions at the right moment, exactly what was the component of which people was participating in the steering committee was absolutely crucial to be defined. It means the customer, and in a particular case, the project manager, and also the sponsor. Sometimes I included in my particular case the different responsible from the different departments from the customer side. The project management office also plays a role important in order to maintain the project governance, because the project office can support us in maintaining and sustaining the rules that have been defined and facilitating the decision-making process. And obviously the project manager is also involved and is also key in this particular task, in this particular effect. So obviously in large corporations, like I work for, there is a need there is a challenge to maintain project governance, and mainly to maintain its consistency, right? So it is one of my issues, or one of my challenges was as project manager, and also in particular cases portfolio manager, just to create or to define the right ways or the right places in where you can store the information. So when developing the governance information repository, we call it GIR, the focus was on the following areas. Number one was defining the RACI matrix, responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Number two was, clear organizational structures, stakeholder analysis, and defining reporting lines. And basically, we used the following approach. We created information repository. So we devised a location for the project management community that were easily accessible on the internet of the organization. The second step was we established a repository. So had this site also serve as a location for storing best practices, lessons learned, knowledge management, descriptions, templates, and examples. And the third step was networking. I created a forum for sharing ideas with a blog, links, discussion area, and training. Obviously, this repository was implemented step by step. And as soon as I was creating and adding best practices, I was asking people to participate and to send us some feedback about this type of thing. So I was helped by the PMO when I created this type of repository. So I was initially also challenged by the organization as why we should make the investment of this information repository. So we found some benefits about that. So by strengthening governance, studies have illustrated that it had a proven track record across projects for increasing the likelihood of delivering to time, cost, and scope, number one. Second, assist in aligning stakeholder expectations, but standardizing the roles and responsibility for the key roles within a project program. So everybody will be able to understand that every project needs to have a sponsor. Every project will have, obviously, a customer, a project manager. Trying to identify the standard key roles and, being working in a common framework all the time. So number three, draw timely decision making by getting the right data to the right person, right? And trying to have the data storage in order to serve all the different key stakeholders. And it ensures that we all know what we are accountable for and responsible for. It's very, very important. So it is not only a question of reading in a paper or in a document. It's not only a question of assigning this type of roles and responsibilities in a meeting, but it needs to be documented and shared by all the people, so anybody can access there and read it. Next, it enables fast-moving projects to maintain tempo in a controlled environment and ensures that the governance is consistently applied across different portfolios. So this is one of the things that having a governance information repository is to have consistency use of this type of effort, because you can guess that this type of thing or this type of project, implementing a governance framework is, hard to do it. It's difficult, but it's not impossible. And if you are able to convince and to describe very well the features, the benefit, the advantages for your organization, you will be able to get the buy-in from your executive in your organizations, because it's worth it. Number 7, so I call it project in a box. So after developing this repository I mentioned, so my mission was not yet complete. So we all know that a governance framework is not one size fits all, it needs to be customized. And the thing is that we used a concept entitled project in a box. So the project in a box concept assisted project managers by providing guidelines on the following things. Guidelines about how much governance does my project need. Second, how do I adapt the project in a box for my specific needs? Okay, how to adapt my specific needs for this particular project. Number three, who are the key stakeholders, the key points to contact, okay, for a project, and what are the modes of communication? The second was what gates of decisions are mandatory. Where can I get the key documents and templates, or where can I find samples? Because samples are very, very important, mainly when people are trying to get, to use this type of governance framework. They need to know, how to apply it, and how to do a follow-up, and how to criticize, how to learn about it, how to improve it. And then, who are the key points of contact for governance standards? What is the standardized tool set for a project manager? This type of thing. So we were trying to work a little bit on that. And the following are the basic steps in identifying the level of intensity of governance framework the project managers need to deploy in a particular project. So my lessons learned are: step number one is you need to define the customer requirements. What is the customer requirements, and what is the nature of the project based on the time and pace and the customer change environment? Step number two is define what is the proposed solution and what success looks like based on project type, financials, defined success, leadership, technology, internal teams, other dependencies. And when you have defined that proposal solution, once the classification is complete in step two, the tool called test sizing, or project in a box, will provide the governance agility that needs to be deployed on a small, medium, large, and extra large scale. And number four, depending on how the test sizing, the customized group of things that you have defined is allocated for the project or program, the tool provides templates and guidelines on how to manage the handover from sales to delivery, planning, stakeholders, kickoff meeting, revenue, monitoring and reporting, communication plan, lessons learned, and project closure, and so on. So those are what I found the basic steps in identifying the level of intensity of a governance framework the project managers need to deploy. Define customer requirements, define proposed solution. Once the classification is complete in step two, you need to provide the governance agility that needs to be deployed in a scale, depending on the situation and depending on how, the type of project is. The tool provides template and guidelines about how to manage the handover. So this some kind of customization in which I was working all the time in this particular real case study. So the thing is, why is project governance critical to the success of a project? So establishing project governance is not a simple task. So significant investment needs to be made when embarking on a new project. So it is often very challenging, when you are embarking in this type of project, because it's a question of time, it's a question of cost, it's a question of effort, it's a question of dealing with people, so you need to be, obviously, to be critical, right, in terms of reasoning, problem solving, and evaluating. So it's often challenging to quantify what the benefits are when it comes to investing in the creation of project governance framework, right? Because you would like to get your wonderful results. But the thing is that depending on the type of project you are managing, probably the governance framework need to be adapted, need to be customized, need to be refined. But in any case, you can do it, because I think it's absolutely crucial, important, and achievable. And finally, we found 4 key benefits of project governance. Number one is single point of accountability. Number two is outline roles, responsibility, and relationships among project stakeholders. And a single point of accountability, because, is the unique place, in which you can see who is responsible and accountable for. Outlining role, responsibility, and so on, because you can get or you can access the description about that. Issue management and resolution, because you will have the rules and the guidelines in order to facilitate decision making. And the last but not least, information dissemination and transparent communication is very, very, really important. So I really will say that project governance provides a single point of accountability. So this is offering clarity and fostering consistency on decision making for the project life cycle. And and by appointing one focal point of accountability, the individual's primary focus will be on delivering on the project objectives and will not be deterred for the duration of the project. So this does not mean that there will be no one throat to choice, but one person will be responsible for the direction and focus of the project, and having multiple individuals accountable will not blur this. So I would say also to remark that in addition, project governance defines and clearly articulates, structured roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities within the project, which also facilitates decision making. This is also critical when the project manager has a deviation regarding scope, time, cost, triple constraint, and so on, that project governance defines whom these issues impact and how to deal with the impact, what is important in order to maintain the project under control. And finally, the governance framework will provide some instructions, on how to deal with issues on the project. Not only does it define whom the issues impacts, but also it details the mechanisms for how to deal with those issues, ensuring that the appropriate review on those issues is done, and who are the key points of contact for addressing and approving any deviations in the project requirements. So I will say finally that project governance provides the direction and defines the decision-making procedures and the metrics for validating the impacts to the project, and enables the project team to deliver on requirements and creates a forum or a way for discussion, for issue resolution to occur in a timely manner, right? In a timely manner. So I would like to move to the conclusions right now. So first of all, project governance provides a single point of accountability. As I told you, you have project governance framework established. You will have under control all the people who is responsible for, and it allows people to know where to access and to whom to ask when they have any issue or problem. Number two, project governance defines clear, articulates structured roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities within the project that facilitates decision making. And I am talking about defining clearly roles like project sponsor, which are the responsibilities for the project sponsor, where the project sponsor needs to make decisions, where the project sponsor is expected to participate, and so on, when the project manager needs to act, which are their roles and responsibilities, who is accountable for, and what is the level of accountability and responsibility for the project manager. Also for the PMO, for the project manager management office or program management office, and needs to be defined which is the role and where are the responsibilities and so on. And also, it's not less important for the steering committees, because the steering committee is absolutely crucial in order to make decisions, right? So I always say that the worst decision is not to make one. So in many cases, I I have learned that not making a decision was a complete chaos, a complete crisis for the project. So the role of the steering committee and the role of the project manager to encourage all the steering committee members is to make decisions. Number 3, not less important, the governance framework will provide instructions. Instructions about what, Alfonso? About how to deal with issues in the project. Instructions, what to do, what not to do. Obviously, those instructions need to be reviewed, need to be revised by all the people, but by all the components. And one of the things that I do when I am running lessons learned after every stage or every phase in the project I manage is to get feedback from the people, to get feedback from all the people regarding if the instructions were applicable, if they were so valid, and if they were, creating some obstacles or generating some things that need to be overcome along the project life cycle. Finally, project governance provides a vehicle for information gathering and reporting to all the stakeholders because, as I told you, as I was explaining to you, we created a repository. This repository needs, obviously, a special effort. I use the PMO, the Project Management Office, to support the maintenance of that repository. But obviously, in that repository, the obligation of the project manager and sometimes even team members is to deposit best practices and tools and things that were useful for a particular project, and that information should be shared with the rest of the stakeholders in a particular project and also in the project management community in the organization. And then you need to take care and engage with project stakeholders from the very beginning. I always say that I have spent a lot of time with project stakeholders in all the projects I have managed in my personal life, professional life during the last 38, 39 years, managing and contributing, trying to collaborate in projects. And the most difficult thing is, those persons that, or the most challenging thing, I will not say it is difficult, but it's challenging, is to approach, some difficult person, what we call difficult person, persons who are not easy to communicate with, or people who are not enough open to talk to, and you need to open this type of thing. One of the valid things that I use that this is very important key point is just to gain the main stakeholder of the project, and implementing a governance framework is a project, an internal project, is the sponsor. So I have been working all the times that I helped or I did this type of implementation, working with the project sponsor and trying to convince him or her about delivering a speech, a short speech about why the project was important and how the governance framework will be facilitating the life to all the project manager and project stakeholders in order to solve issues, in order to minimize the conflict, in order to facilitate the project success and also the organizational success. So engaging stakeholders from the very beginning to the very end are absolutely crucial for project success. You can do it because I consider you as an audience are excellent professionals, and telling you or calling you as excellent professionals does not mean you are Superman or Superwoman, but I'm completely sure that you are ready to move the wheel of effort, ahead, and moving. Obviously, finding some obstacles, but you will be able to overcome it. And finally, but not less important, the executive support is always needed. One of the important things that is not, reflected in this presentation, but we would like to explain during some time because it's important, was selling the idea of implementing and project governance framework, right? So the thing is that I was focused on trying to explain what will be the features or characteristics of the governance framework, number one. Number two, I was talking about benefits, for the organization, benefits for the project manager, and benefits for the customer. And number 3, but not less important, advantages. Advantages in terms of efficiency, in terms of being more effective, obtaining better results, not reinventing the wheel, and facilitating the life to all the project managers. So selling project governance to executives, I think it is really crucial. You can do it because you are excellent professionals, and I would like to encourage you to move forward. And it was a challenging project. I learned a lot. If I needed to do it one more time, I think I will be able to apply the steps that I have been sharing with you. And now I will be really open to any type of questions, doubt, or comments that you want to do. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, and try to be as entertaining as possible. It is not a very funny subject in terms of telling too many jokes or too many stories, but I am completely open to any question, comments, or even insults. It will be allowed.
Well, thank you,
Thank you.
Alfonso. I'm sure there won't be any insults for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
In a PM immature organization, how do you recommend easing into project governance?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. It's a great question, because in most of the organizations I worked for were a little bit immature, or in some cases so much immature in that organization. Well, the first thing that they did is just to run an assessment in terms of assessing the organization, assessing the environment. I mean, trying to evaluate and assess what was the level of management support, what was the level of the project manager, if the project manager was really recognized in the organization, if that role existed or not, if the team was supporting the project manager, this type of thing. This is some kind of assessment you are interested in. You can send me an email to alfonso.bucero@abucero.com, and I will be able to share with you that assessment that will allow you to assess your organization and being able to identify which are the strongest parts of your organization and what are the weaknesses. And I suggest you to put the focus on the strongest parts in order to get much better results. So the thing is that my recommendation, number 1, is to assess the organization, to evaluate it. And number 2 is just to explain and to spend time with executives in terms of the project governance. Is something like in the government of a nation, you need to establish some rules, some guides, some procedures, and some ways of facilitating decision making and moving forward, trying to sell the idea to your executives in terms of describing which are the benefits of project governance, which are the advantages, and trying to features, advantages, and benefits, and trying to close. And then you will be able to create, a plan in terms of how to implement following the steps that I was talking about. I don't know if I answered your question or gave you some ideas. Let me know through the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alfonso. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And with that, Alfonso, we thank you so much for your time and your expertise, and thank you for presenting with us today.
Thank you. It was much pleasure. I wish you, all the audience, and yourself a Merry Christmas and a happy 2023 and better projects.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.